The second part of our anniversary trip took us from Cappadocia in central Turkey to Istanbul, an ancient city on the Bosphorus Strait straddling both Europe and Asia. Today, it's a modern cosmopolitan metropolis that's still the place where East meets West. After arriving at the airport, we headed to the Orient Bank Hotel. It's located in the Old City, a converted bank building that's now a boutique hotel. But it may be better known as the location of the opening scene of the James Bond movie Skyfall. There was no political intrigue or car chases during our first afternoon in Istanbul. We just walked around the old city to see the sights, Hagia Sophia, the Blue Mosque, and then we wandered and got lost in a maze of alleyways and shopping bazaars. The Spice Bazaar was just a few steps away from our hotel, so we headed back to the room before dinner. The Orient Bank Hotel was built in 1912 as a German bank. It was recently renovated and opened as a 36-room boutique hotel in the heart of the old city. A great place to watch the commotion playing out on the streets below. That evening, we headed up to the hotel's rooftop terrace for picturesque views of the city. Dinner that evening was at another rooftop nearby. We enjoyed delicious local mezes and listened as the call to prayer echoed across the city and the sun set on our first day in Istanbul. The next morning, we met up with our guide, Gazme, and headed off to explore the sights of this ancient city. Hagia Sophia is probably one of the best-known landmarks in Istanbul. The current structure was built as the Cathedral of Constantinople by Byzantine Emperor Justinian I in 537 AD. It stood as an Orthodox church for centuries until the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans in 1453, when it was converted into a mosque. It then became a museum in 1935 before becoming a mosque again in 2020. The next stop was the iconic Blue Mosque, officially named the Sultan Ahmed Mosque. It was completed in 1616 during the reign of Ahmed I. But the name Blue Mosque comes from the hand-painted blue tiles that adorn its interior walls. During the heyday of the Byzantine Empire, 100,000 spectators would gather in its hippodrome to watch chariot races. Not much remains today other than a few Byzantine trophies like the obelisk of Theodosius brought back from Egypt in 390 AD, or the serpent column brought back from Delphi, Greece around the same time. Built in the 6th century, the basilica cistern was part of the Byzantine water supply system for Constantinople. The cistern is capable of holding 2.8 million cubic feet, or over 20 million gallons of water. Most of the columns used in its construction, including the famous Medusa head, are thought to simply be recycled materials from previously demolished buildings. Next, we went off the beaten path to visit the Rustem Pasha Mosque. The mosque was designed by noted Ottoman architect Sinam and built around the mid-1500s. It's notable for its famous Iznik tile work. From there, we walked across the Galata Bridge. The famous bridge spans the Golden Horn, which separates the old city from the newer part of European Istanbul. It's well known for fishermen, which line the bridge every day. We then boarded an historic underground funicular line called the Tunnel. It's the second oldest operating subway system in the world after the London Underground. It took us up the hill to see the Galata Tower, built in 1348 as a watchtower for a Genoese trading colony.
Here we are at the Galata Tower. We're going to go home and take a break because it's been a long day already and we've still got the food tour to do tonight.
Yes. Yes, and a lot of tempting shopping along the way.
We're going to try not to stop anywhere.
And believe it or not, we only stopped for a few photos on the way back to the old city before we headed out on a street food walking tour with our guide Henri to sample all the delicious delicacies that the city has to offer.
Some green stuff inside, but eatable birds, let's say.
Let's see if you have a bite.
Henri mentioned that the food on the Asian side of Istanbul was really good, and of course we had to find out for ourselves. So we hopped a ferry across the Bosphorus Strait, which separates Europe from Asia. A few minutes later, we arrived in the same city, but a different continent, to continue our culinary adventure.
Baby beef intestine or pork, lamb intestine?
Lamb.
Baby lamb. Baby baba intestine, sorry.
After enjoying a few more lamb sandwiches and some stuffed mussels, we hopped the ferry and headed back to Europe for some baklava and Turkish coffee before calling it a night.
We're at Topkapi Palace, the palace of the which sultan?
Mehmed, I think.
The Conqueror?
It was all of the sultans from about 14 something to about 18.
I think he built it. I think Mohammed built it.
Mohammed the second, maybe?
At 14 something.
I
I
don't
think
know.
that's it. It's going to be a great day.
Juliet was right. Topkapi Palace was built by Mehmet the Conqueror in 1459, 6 years after he conquered Constantinople and renamed the city Istanbul. The palace served as the capital of the Ottoman Empire from the mid-1400s to the mid-1800s. Today, it's a museum housing all things Ottoman, from the dormitories of the eunuch servants to the harem where the Sultan's wives and families lived. After exploring the palace for a few hours and getting our fill of imperial Ottoman life, we headed out across town to go shopping at the Grand Bazaar. Gazme knows all the best spots in this ancient labyrinth of shops, and I think we hit most of them. Once our extra suitcase was completely filled, Gazme took us off the beaten path once again. Down a maze of shopping streets and alleys, we came upon an art gallery housed in an ancient building that was once an inn for traders, dating back to 900 AD. We climbed up through an old rock staircase and emerged to panoramic views of the city. After leaving the gallery, we said farewell to Gazme and set off for another Turkish cultural experience. Not really knowing what to expect, we entered a 300-year-old Turkish bath. And actually, it was a fantastic experience. Very relaxing despite having several buckets of water poured over my head by a hairy Turkish guy. It was a great way to cap off another terrific day in Istanbul. For our last 2 nights in Istanbul, we moved to a hotel in the Ortaköy neighborhood, further up on the Bosphorus. Our hotel was right on the water and overlooking the Ortaköy Mosque. We soon discovered that the setting of the mosque right under the Bosphorus Bridge was a favorite spot for photo shoots and Instagram selfies. We wanted to get out on the water, so we chartered a boat for the day to cruise the Bosphorus from Istanbul up to where the strait empties into the Black Sea and back. While it wasn't quite as luxurious as the yachts on below deck, it was nice having the entire boat to ourselves as we cruised up the Bosphorus, seeing the sights and waterside mansions along the way. This waterside fort is the Romelli Fortress. It was built around 1450 by Mehmet the Conqueror in preparation for his siege on Constantinople. His goal was to cut off any naval or logistical support for the Byzantines in the city. There are hundreds of mansions along the shores of the Bosphorus, including the official residence of the Turkish president. We stopped for lunch in a little fishing village called Anadolu Kavaji, just at the mouth of the Bosphorus before it opens into the Black Sea. We sat outside at a fish restaurant, and I picked out a fresh turbot to be fried up for us for lunch. I didn't realize how big it was, and we ended up having to share some of it with the people at the table next to us. We cruised back to Istanbul, this time along the Asian side of the Bosphorus. We saw a lot of seagulls and dolphins, as well as more mansions and fortresses along the shoreline. After arriving back at the dock that afternoon, we walked over to the Dolmabahce Palace. It was home to the sultans from about 1850 until the fall of the Ottoman Empire in the 1920s. That evening, we took a water taxi to Arnavutköy and had dinner at a restaurant called Sir Balik. It's a very local place with delicious fresh fish and beautiful views. After dinner, we returned to Ortaköy, where the call to prayer was echoing from the mosque. The square around the mosque was also buzzing with activity. Ortaköy is known for kumpir, basically loaded baked potatoes, and vendor after vendor were offering the savory spuds. The next morning, it was sadly time to say goodbye to Istanbul, starting with the friendly Ortaköy neighborhood dogs, then off to the airport and on to the next part of the adventure.